Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
Bro, it's been a while since we talked basketball. The second round is in full swing. Second round might dang near be over. But we've had some great basketball. And even though we haven't been on the pod, both of us have been really locked in. TV's been holding it down on the TikToks, and don't think I haven't been watching basketball. I've been watching some hoops as well. So yeah.
Yeah, man, Jay, I feel bad for you because that freaking ghost popcorn put you out of commission for a week and a half, bro.
Man, it was brutal. Don't get it twisted. That was one of them things, man, where let's just say next year when we get into the Daily Picks Challenge, I got some yeoman's work I gotta do. I gotta make up for things after the way this one went. Cause man,
my boy Jay's gonna be on his revenge tour next year, trying to make sure that I don't even get a chance to win the Daily Picks Challenge. Man. But man, we're back. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. The second round, man, has been absolutely crazy. And now that we got stuff situated out, we're gonna be locking in. We might, again, potential multi-episodes per week. Now we got the draft coming up soon. The WNBA season has started. Man, it's a perfect time to be a basketball fan.
Facts. I think we're in really full swing right now. I was telling TV before we hopped on the pod, things in my personal life are starting to slowly come to fold. And it's one of those things where I've just been telling myself the sooner I get to this moment where I'm at right now, it's going to change my complete perspective on being able to continue to get this content up for you guys, not just over here, but on the little pet project I got working on the side. There's a lot coming in this basketball space. And like TV said, there's no better time to be a basketball fan than now with the NBA, the WNBA kicking off. And just, we're just getting a lot of competitive hoops at the moment, bro. Where do we start?
Yeah, we're going to get into that pretty shortly. And we even have a little bit of an NBA draft topic here today, too. So, again, just too much to talk about, and we're going to get into it very shortly. But before we start this episode, we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow our individual accounts at TV on Basketball, at Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the TikTok, in terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod, follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. You got the news, you got the NBA recaps, everything you want, you can find on that page. The clips as well, they can be found over there. Don't forget to subscribe or leave a review if you're on any of the podcast networks. We really do appreciate all your support there. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. Jay, are you ready to get into this? There's a lot we got to catch up on.
Bro, I'm hype. It's been a while since we talked hoops, and like you said, I alley-ooped it to you before you did the socials. Where do we even start, bro?
We actually got to start not on the basketball court, because what happened this week, Jay, is that the NBA draft lottery happened, and we knew that some crazy stuff could happen. Mm-hmm. But did we expect two teams with 3% or less odds to drop into the top three? No, we didn't. Because out of all the teams to win the NBA draft lottery, we have the Atlanta Hawks winning with a 3% chance, and they get the first overall pick. A lot of crazy stuff has happened in this draft. Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are some takeaways you have from the draft lottery?
Obviously, the number one thing is that the Atlanta Hawks are big winners in this because they just created another scenario for themselves. Obviously, all the talk is around what Trae Young may be doing this offseason, what they want to do with DeJounte Murray, how they decide to move forward with guys like Onyeka Okongwu, what they do with a guy like Clint Capella. All of these things were already questions beforehand, and now this number one overall pick that they have, it changes the dynamic significantly because it's one of those things where all of these questions, they're still huge, but they come in the form of now being something that buys the front office time. If you get a first round overall pick and you make the actual draft pick, you can tell yourself, well, we're bringing along another cog in the system. If you decide to use that first overall draft pick as a catalyst to start something new, to be able to rebuild, that's another angle that you could take where if you decide to sell off a Trae Young, if you decide to sell off a DeJounte, if you decide to sell off both of them, and step in a completely different direction by just gaining as much draft capital in this draft class and future draft classes as you can, no one can judge you because you're sitting there in a circumstance where you have the number one overall pick in a circumstance where you like you said, 3% chance. It's not typical for you to be able to fall into this situation. So that was huge for them. Washington at number 2, I think, is another big one. They just need guys. And I mean blue blood level dude, like, whether he's a pet project or not, this is going to be a guy that when you put him through the developmental system, like, he has the chance to really boom. Now there's always a bust, but he needs to have some boom to him, because they just need dudes who you can say, like, wow, we see upside. They did that with a Bilal Coulibaly last year, and we saw some stride from him. They did that with a Deni Avdija in prior seasons ago. That's something for them. The Pistons, people will say that the Pistons are losers in this because they dropped despite having the worst record in the NBA. I honestly think it was a little bit overblown. I think the Pistons falling to 5 is not great, but I think when you look at the way people have talked about this draft class in particular, and then you think about the type of things that the Pistons need, I mean, you go through the first handful of teams, the Pistons, they don't need a guard. They don't need a guard as bad as like a Washington could, for example, if they decide to go with a guard, or the wing prospects. There's people who feel really good about Zachary Ricochet, but then there's other people who feel like there's a guy like a Ron Holland or Cody Williams, right? There's all these different ranges of what guys look like. So falling to 5 is not that terrible. My Chicago Bulls falling to 11. Look, it was inevitable. The minute they decided they wanted to be legitimate play-in contenders, I knew that we weren't going to get a great draft pick. So, 11, not horrible, not great. And then the Spurs. The Spurs getting 4 and 8. There's a million different things they can do with that. They can package to move up. They can package to go towards a guy like a Trae Young if they want to be able to put together a solid trade package. They can use both picks and grab another Frenchman. It looks like there's a real possibility for that in a Zachary Ricochet, for example. And then at 8, grab like a Robert Dillingham. Like, they have so many different things they can do, and knowing that they have Victor Wembanyama in the fold already, I mean, they've got to be feeling confident going into draft night with what they got set up, because the whole board is open to them. They're in the top. They're in the top 8 twice.
Yeah, no, this draft was like this draft lottery is absolutely insane. Shout out to the Hawks, man. This reminds me a lot of what the Pelicans had to go through when they got the number 1 pick to get Zion Williamson. Obviously, the draft class is nowhere near as talented as that draft class, of course, but by getting the number 1 pick when no one expected you to, because I think that at that time the Pelicans were like number 8 or number 9, opens up a whole new possibility. Because at that time we knew that the Pelicans were gonna lose Anthony Davis, so the fact that they were able to get compensated by the fact to get the number 1 pick and get Zion Williamson really helps out their situation there. The Hawks, maybe you don't have that Zion Williamson type player, but you definitely have someone to either add to what you have or be a building block to some if you want to go in a completely different direction. This is what's good about having someone in this range, because Trae Young is not super old. DeJounte Murray is not super old. So even adding someone like an Alex Sarr with the number 1 overall pick doesn't completely move off the timeline if you really think about it. So that's a good place for them to start. You have the Houston Rockets, who have competed for the first time in years. They had we talked about the Hawks getting a 3% chance at number 1 overall pick. The Houston Rockets had a 1.5% chance. So the fact that they were able to jump from 13 to 3 in this draft is big time for them as well. Because like we mentioned with the Hawks, this team feels like it's more apt to compete now. So who knows what can happen if you pair, say, the 3rd overall pick and maybe a potentially a Tari Eason. If you pair it up with I know we talked about potentially moving Jalen Green in the past, maybe moving off of him. But there's so many ways you can go with that if you are the Houston Rockets. Then you got the Spurs getting 4 and 8, in which basically means that my Raptors lost out on their pick this year because it falls out of the top 6. Look, if there's one year that you don't mind missing out on a lottery pick, it's this year. An anonymous GM said that drafting number 1 here is basically starting from number 10 and some other years, which is saying quite a lot. But at the same time, after having such a bad season, I was hoping that the Raptors were able to at least keep that pick. But at the end of the day, a lot of movers and shakers in this draft, and with so many picks, we talked about this before the pod. Besides Alex Sarr, there's been so much movement in these other picks that you can have a guy who's number 4 in one mock draft, who's also number 13, 14 in another mock draft. Like this is such like a this sort of draft class can fluctuate like on any given week. So this would be very interesting to see who falls where.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we'll probably, deep dive into the draft a lot closer to when the actual draft is. A big part of this is just going to be going through the draft combine, hearing about, what guys' measurements and things like that are to really kind of clarify things. I think also being able to sit down and really lock in on what teams need, what kind of players are in this draft, considering the fact that it hasn't been so highly regarded. There's just so much to really look into, and this is usually my favorite time of the year. To be honest with you, don't get me wrong, I love the NBA playoffs and I'm always locked in, but this is kind of like from a writing perspective for me in terms of covering the NBA. This is where I kind of got my bread and butter started, was covering I think it actually started ironically with the Trae Young Luka Doncic draft. I was a big Michael Porter Jr. guy. I was a big MPJ advocate in that draft, despite his injury coming out of Missouri. And that's actually where a lot of my real NBA fandom from an analyst standpoint started. So I love this part of the year. And although I'm not super tapped in with this draft class, by the time we get to draft day, I will practically have an encyclopedia level memory on these dudes because I'm trying to lock in heavy.
So yeah, I mean, we're gonna update you guys more. We're gonna talk about the NBA draft as we get closer as well. We're gonna go get the storylines leading up to it. But yeah, let us know what you guys think down below about this draft lottery. Lots of movers and shakers. I mean, just one last thing: the Pistons, Trailblazers, and Hornets all finished in the bottom 4 of the entire league this year, and they ended up going 5, 6, 7. So
Crazy.
look, if I'm the league, don't get rid of the draft lottery. We're trying to combat tanking. This is clearly working so far. If you wanna be a better team, management, you got to do better. So that's basically what it's telling us. Let us know down below what you guys think about all of the results coming out from the NBA draft lottery. Let us move on to the playoff talk, bro, because this second round has been absolutely crazy. And we're going to start off with one of the most interesting series because the Dallas Mavericks are 3-2 up on the Oklahoma City Thunder after winning a game in OKC. Luka Doncic with a 30-point triple-double. Derrick Jones Jr. starts off the game 6 for 6, including 3 threes. This Dallas Mavericks team has been a little bit up and down. We've seen them lose some pretty big games, but they've responded in big ways. They are, I believe, like 3-0 or 4-0 after taking a loss. So they've had a great playoff so far. One game away from the conference finals. What are your thoughts on the series?
I think the biggest thing with Dallas is they've been able to respond to the fact that OKC is playing this 5-out style and still trying to figure out the Josh Giddey hole. I think they've been able to make the most out of the fact that Josh Giddey is causing a bit of a foible for the Oklahoma City Thunder on both sides of the ball, because at the end of the day, they just cannot seem to really generate great offense with Giddey on the floor. But at the same time, he is easily has the biggest target on his back in terms of being on the defensive end. And I think that Dallas has been able to compete with that. I think the other thing, too, is a lot of people didn't see this during the regular season. It's completely understandable to be a little worried about this coming into this series. But Dallas has hustled. Like, that's been a big thing with Luka Doncic's teams, right? Not necessarily playing out in transition, not hustling back on defense, in terms of being able to cover on transition. And we know that Oklahoma City is one of the better transition teams in the NBA. The fact that the Dallas Mavericks have been able to compete in that aspect of the game, it has really changed things, because them being able to compete in terms of up-tempo, it makes them a much more viable squad. They've definitely got the athletes to hang with the Oklahoma City Thunder. That part has been proven. I think the biggest thing now for them is just to continue to be able to lean on their playmakers. And I don't know if anybody's noticed, but PJ Washington decided he wanted to turn into a 3-point demon over the last week. And TV, we said it at the trade deadline when it happened. There was a world where the acquisition of Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, if they did what their attributes make them what their attributes lead us to believe they are at peak level. If they perform within the roles that their attributes allow, the Dallas Mavericks are going to be a dangerous team in the postseason. PJ Washington was supposed to be a floor spacer at the forward position that will be able to step out and create space for the Dallas Mavericks offense that they didn't have beforehand, a la the whole reason why they got Grant Williams this past summer to begin with, right? PJ Washington has been able to provide that floor spacing. Daniel Gafford as a rim runner and a rim deterrent around the basket on the defensive end would be one of the biggest things notable for him as an athlete that doesn't really have a big offensive, skill set. He's been able to make up for that on the defensive end in ways that we thought he was capable of. That's been his way to play into what he does best. Those two are giving us the best, us as the Dallas Mavericks, everything that's the peak version of what you would expect from those two playing at their best optimal roles. And Dallas is benefiting across the board, and it's making them a very tough out to the point that they're literally one game away from winning the series.
Man, who knew? I mean, let's just go back to the Mavericks offseason. We knew they had Kyrie. They knew they had Luka. They had to fix a lot of things around them. And what did we say they had to focus on? That center position to get some rim runners and rim deterrents, and they needed to get some floor space. They got the 4 position. Who do they get? They get PJ Washington, Derek Lively, and Derek Jones Jr., and they got Daniel Gafford as well. These guys have been absolutely phenomenal in their roles in this series. The fact where you have games like game 4 where Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are struggling, but you're still in the game because of these guys. So you can have pedestrian performances from your 2 stars. And this team, even players like Josh Green, even players coming off their bench, they're still playing their roles enough where they're keeping you in it. And I feel like this is something that Luka Doncic teams didn't have in the past because it was super Luka or nothing at all. They've been able to win games, maybe in spite of Luka Doncic at times. Maybe Kyrie Irving is taking the mantle. But it's also people like PJ Washington, like you mentioned. He's had 2 27-point games in this series. It has been Derek Lively being able to be that absolute gold rim runner for them. Derek Jones, like I mentioned in the last game, 6 for 6 to start the game. Everyone is contributing to in a high level, and that's what's really helping out this Dallas Mavericks team. Over on the OKC side, you got SGA doing his thing. You're getting some good games from Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren. Maybe not their best, but they're still playing well. But the biggest reason why they're 3-2 down in this series, Jay, did you know that they were the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league this year in terms of 3-point percentage?
No.
Over these last
Boston. Dang.
Yeah, it was them at 38.1%, and they also hit the most eighth most 3-point field goals made per game. But over the last 4 games, they've hit a total of 43s, and they've shot 29% from 3. I don't know what's happening to their 3-point shot, but it's just completely disappeared over these last 4 games to the point where Dallas is comfortable giving them that shot when teams in the regular season were terrified of it. So there's a lot of factors here. Of course, Dallas Mavericks is playing great, but the Oklahoma City Thunder are finding it really difficult to score in the playoffs, especially when that 3-pointer isn't falling.
Yeah, I think another thing when you talk about Oklahoma City, because I didn't really touch on them too much, their thing is that if you really break down the series for Oklahoma City, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is putting together Herculean efforts. We've definitely seen that throughout this series. Yes. Chet Holmgren is having moments on defense. Lucas Dort is having moments on defense. Once you get past that, it's shaky. Jalen Williams is having a lot of struggles in terms of creating offense for himself throughout this series. Cason Wallace has been able to come in with the Josh Giddey issues and come in the second half. I think he started in game 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Isaiah Joe started.
Oh, excuse me. It was Joe who started. That's right. Isaiah Joe started. That was an interesting lineup that they had where it gave a little bit more floor spacing, but they weren't able to capitalize too much off of minutes where Josh Giddey wasn't on the floor, minutes where Josh Giddey was and wasn't on the floor. It didn't change the dynamic in terms of Josh Giddey facing second units. In game 5, when Josh Giddey faced off against the second unit, they didn't necessarily lose the disparity because, and that was, I think, when Josh Giddey was on the second unit, there was no Luka, and it might have just been Kyrie, but there was no Luka on the floor. They didn't win those minutes. They didn't necessarily lose them. It was more of neutral. And the reason why you move a Josh Giddey to the bench is with the idea of it being a net positive because he gives you a different dynamic offensively against second man units. But if he's just going to if those units are going to just break even, it actually puts you in a weird predicament because it makes you wonder, well, then what's the difference between starting him and having him come off the bench if either way he's going to come at a net zero at best in most lineups. That's a tough part for Oklahoma City. I think the biggest thing when you look at them right now is they're doing everything they can to try to contain this Dallas Mavericks offense. I think there's just at this point right now, when you compare this series to their opening round series against New Orleans, the biggest culture shock for them, besides obviously postseason basketball just being more physical, the athletes for Dallas are being athletes. Derrick Jones Jr. on defense, on the perimeter specifically, he is showing off his athletic tools.
Did you see that three he blocked? Like he blocked that like Chet three in the last game. Woo!
Dude, I'm telling you, he's showing out. He's showing out defensively. Daniel Gafford, who I mentioned earlier, showing out defensively on that side of the ball. Those guys, they are just playing with a completely different fire. And I think the biggest thing about what they have moving forward is when you think about the athletic switchability they have across the board, with the ability to be able to step out, with having dudes like Daniel Gafford as a complete rim deterrent, that's making it tougher and tougher for guys on the Oklahoma City Thunder to be able to get to the basket. You got to think about it. Yes, you mentioned that their three-point shooting was huge, but one of the other things that was big for the Oklahoma City Thunder during the season was that they led the NBA in drives. That's one of their things. They're one of their main things.
Drive and kick.
There you go, TV. That 5-out style breathes. It lives and dies over your ability to get paint touches. Well, if every time you touch the paint, you want nothing to do with it within the first 2 seconds of having to make a decision, there's not going to be too many good looks that come out of that because it's going to be a lot of passing out to resetting, not passing out to being able to get real shot opportunities. And of course, this team is not necessarily like an Indiana, for example, when it comes to their lack of being able to create in the half court. But this is still a team that struggles in the half court in comparison to what we know they're able to do in transition. This is a team similar to Indiana that does thrive in the open floor because they know the athleticism they have across the 5-man units that they put out there, similar to an Indiana. That's why they trust themselves in those circumstances so much more. But in this series, they have not been able to get those same kind of paint touches, and that means they've not been able to get those same kind of easy looks that they were getting all regular season.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like you talking about the athleticism of the Mavs, we really just have to look at the periphery players outside of the three major superstars in this series: Luka, Kyrie, and SGA. The Maverick supporting players are just playing better than the Oklahoma City Thunder supporting players right now, and that's something that OKC is not used to. So seeing that from the Dallas Mavericks, seeing that those just key moves that they made during the season and the offseason might be a difference between them, not making the playoffs last year to now potentially going to the Western Conference Finals with a chance to make it to the finals, is just some great work there from the Dallas Mavericks front office. Great for them. The Thunder have not been in the situation yet this playoffs where they're put in an elimination game. But let's see if this young team is able to bounce back and force a Game 7. I think it's good. This has been a damn good series. Can't wait to see who comes up on top next. Jay, let's move on to the next series, and we're gonna stick over in the West. We got to talk about the Denver Nuggets and Timberwolves because, man, this series has shifted from one pendulum to another because the Wolves start off this series 2-0 to the point where teams are like, man, the Denver Nuggets might be the Milwaukee Bucks. 1 year and done. Are they going to be able to bounce back? Well, yes, because even though they lost their first 2 home games, they went on the road, won their last 2, finally won one at home, and from going 2-0 down, now they're winning 3-2. Jay, I'm going to throw this over to you. What are your thoughts of the series so far?
I hate to use this cliche, but man, champion spirit. I'm not going to lie to you. They came out after those first 2 games feeling defeated, punched in the mouth. You got, Jamal Murray throwing heat packs, Michael Malone jumping up on referees. Like, it was looking kind of sketchy through the first 2 games. And it was looking like one of those circumstances where the Minnesota Timberwolves were just going to continue to impose their will on teams coming out of that first series against Phoenix. And I think Denver just kind of realized that, like, if they're going to be able to defend this championship, they're not going to be able to do it playing the finesse style that they've been getting away with for the last 2 to 3 years. This was going to be a series where they were going to have to become more physical and play up to what the Minnesota Timberwolves were coming out with, and just hope that the Minnesota Timberwolves weren't going to be able to sustain that level of physicality. And they were able to do that. In game 3, we saw Jokic setting brick wall screens. And don't get me wrong, Jokic has always been a pretty solid screen setter. But there were a couple of screens starting in game 3 that were like those send a message, Steven Adams level, hey, if this is how you want to play, this is what we're going to do then, type of things. And at the end of the day, the other thing for the Denver Nuggets that has just been able to help them, TV has been their bread and butter dating back to last season. If the Denver Nuggets are going to hit tough shots, it's going to be a long night for any team they go up against, regardless of how good their defense is. Jamal Murray has been hitting acrobatic layups, jumpers from above the arc, behind the arc, from the half court line, on the sideline. He if it's a hard shot in horse, it's an easy shot for him in game. That's how it looks to me. Yeah. And they're just in a situation right now where the Denver Nuggets are playing with a heat check. They're basically asking themselves, when are we going to not be on fire? Because over the last 3 games, they've been able to put together stuff on offense where it seems like the basket is the size of the ocean. These guys can't seem to miss anything.
Bro, they're doing this against the number 1 defense in basketball. Remember that, too. Like, I mean, firstly, the number 1 defense in basketball really showed out these first 2 games. That game 2 was one of the best defensive performances I might have seen in the playoffs. The way that they were like suffocating the Denver Nuggets, seeing Jamal Murray be so frustrated in that second quarter was one of the craziest things I've ever seen, especially coming from the Denver Nuggets, who were the defending champions. But then all of a sudden, the Denver Nuggets like just went back to their style of play, and looky here, Nikola Jokic, after being told by Shaq that he didn't deserve to win MVP, decided, you know what? I am the MVP, and I'm going to show it here. Nikola Jokic, man. I know people are clowning on Rudy Gobert these last few games for the way that he's been defending Jokic, but tell me, who is stopping Jokic right now? Anyone in the league. Over the last 3 games, he's been averaging 33 points per game, 9.5 assists, 9.5 rebounds. What are you supposed to do when this man like just decides to pull up in your grill from 25 feet and hit a 3 in your face? What are you supposed to do when he grabs a rebound around 2 of your bigs and just puts it back up? Like, there's Nikola Jokic is on a level here that very few have reached in the playoffs, that it feels like no matter who you put on him, it's basically barbecue chicken, including the defensive player of the year. So when you have that going on, you have Aaron Gordon getting back to his ways. Last game having 27 points, absolutely fantastic performance. Jamal Murray hitting his stride. You got KCP, even though he's injured, hitting his shots again. And then the bench of the Denver Nuggets too, competing with the Timberwolves bench, which is one of the things we were looking at before the series. When the Nuggets are playing like this, we talk about how Boston, if they're hitting threes, they feel unstoppable. When the Nuggets are this well-oiled machine from top to bottom, no one's beating this team.
I mean, facts. I mean, this is one of those things where I feel like you look at this series and the swing that it took from game 2 on after they went down 0-2, it starts to remind you a lot of the series prior against the Lakers. It just comes to a point where that team just is able to out-execute you, and it just looks too easy. TV, there were shots in game 5 where I was sitting back watching the game with my dad and my brother just saying like, well, if they're going to make this, then, I mean, how much longer do we have to keep playing this game? Because if they're going to continue to hit shots at this level, it's going to be one – TV, I was saying this when I was watching the game with my dad. The Denver Nuggets are humming when Justin Holiday is hitting threes. Like you just know they're playing at a completely different level when they've got guys coming off the bench like that, coming off and hitting big shots in timely moments. Got Christian Brown playing well, Aaron Gordon acting like he doesn't know how to miss a shot. Like these guys are playing at a certain level where it gets to a point where you just have to. It goes back to the like how people felt once upon a time about guarding Kevin Durant. Maybe how they still feel about guarding Kevin Durant. You know that idea that you can do the contest, you can try yourself, you can try to get all up in him if you want to. You can do your best defensively to give him as little airspace as possible. But sometimes it just comes down to good offense beats great defense every time. That's just all it is.
That's really it. Like, what do you do with Jokic? You go one-on-one with him. You can have the best contest ever. He hits that freaking that driveway dad fadeaway. No chance. You decide to double team him because that's what you're supposed to do with the superstars. This guy's the best passer in the league. So what do you do with Nikola Jokic? Literally absolutely nothing. And we've seen it with this series. People have been calling Rudy Gobert. We've seen it in the last series where he's absolutely dominating Anthony Davis. Literally no one can stop him, man. It literally just comes down to that. And when he's playing at an MVP level, best player in the league level, then this Denver Nuggets team is there's a reason why we thought that they were the clear favorites going into the playoffs and why they're reminding us now. Because people were talking about it. I mean, you've seen the clips. Stephen A. Smith saying, oh, this series is over after 2 games. Charles Barkley's like, oh, this is going to be a sweep. This is the defending champions, bro. They know exactly like how to turn it on. And when they have it going with the best player in the league, it's a beautiful thing to watch. And you hate to go against every other team.
Facts. I mean, there's not much more to say, man. Denver is just playing at a different level. I feel like they got exactly the kick in the teeth they needed to be able to realize that if they're going to be able to make a run to the Western Conference Finals and obviously eventually get back to the finals with hopes of defending their championship, like they were going to have to come out and play with a different style. We understand that they're one of the best teams in the NBA. We also understood that series against the Lakers might have still been a little bit of a cakewalk that was residue of the regular season. But as soon as they faced the Minnesota Timberwolves and got down 0-2, I think the urgency shot back up in a way that they hadn't had for, you can make the argument, probably like the last month, maybe, up until game 2 was over and they felt that their immortality was no longer as viable as it once was beforehand, right? They were coming to the postseason wondering about the health of Jamal Murray. Obviously, during the Lakers series, he was able to play well enough to get them wins in big games, but he didn't have a really strong series against the Lakers. Obviously, the idea that they're not nearly as deep. People continuously bringing up the lack of presence of guys like Bruce Brown, who helped them on their run last year. There was all this conversation coming into the postseason, but it didn't seem like there was any urgency that came with all that crisis. And it took until game 2 when things looked like they were kind of getting bleak for things to turn the other way. And ever since Denver kind of got the shock to the system that they needed, I mean, they're back to looking like the best team in basketball.
Bro, I mean, even at that Lakers series, I think Denver Nuggets fans will tell you the same thing. They won that series in 5, and they didn't look great at all. Let's be completely honest. We mentioned it after that series that the Lakers were winning for like 70-80% of that series in terms of like actual in-game minutes, and the Nuggets needed that like 2-3 minute run to really just like end thing like in each game just for them to beat the Lakers. So even though it was a cakewalk, the Nuggets didn't look great. And that carried over to this series. So after these first 2 games, like you mentioned, they got the wake-up call, and now they're like, okay, yeah, we are the best team in the world, and they're showing it right now. And this team is one of the best, most fun teams to watch in the league.
Yeah, I mean, so like you said, not too much more to add on Denver, man. They are a different breed. They are a different breed.
Yeah, they are very good. And honestly, both of these 2 West series so far have been absolutely fantastic, man. Potentially both of these games are going to 7. So I can't wait to see who's going to be able to come out on top. Let's move on to the East now. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get to the Dead series afterwards. I don't want to talk about the Dead series until later. But we're going to start off with this series, which has been quite entertaining, to be completely honest. The Indiana Pacers taking on the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks go back to MSG, play like freaking superheroes, and absolutely destroy the Pacers by winning by 30 in Game 5. Jalen Brunson has been phenomenal, as always. Jay, throwing it over to you. What are your takeaways from the series?
I mean, look. The Knicks might be running out of guys, but these dudes have not ran out of heart. That's the
Gas.
best way to put it.
They can run out of guys, but they can never run out of gas, bro.
Nah,
They don't
bro.
get
You
tired.
can get rid of as many people on the Knicks as you want to, but as long as they got a little bit of juice, they're gonna be A-OK. And they just continue to prove that they're able to work within circumstances. I mean, guy after guy, Mitch Robb, Julius Randle, OG, Bojan. Like you just keep going down the list. And TV, the most impressive part about this is we're not talking about like guys off the bench that would just kind of help fill out the rotation. These are all guys that you can make a legitimate argument either deserve at least 15 plus minutes a game or should be starting during a playoff series.
Guys. They're all starting caliber guys.
I mean, we literally just named we just named 4 guys who in normal circumstances would maybe be starting for the Knicks right now. Like if the season start, if we were going back regular season wise, right? Yeah. Let's go ahead and push ourselves to next October. There's a legitimate argument. Now, don't get me wrong. Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo have been excellent. I hope they pay Isaiah Hartenstein, who's been balling, right?
Yeah.
But you can make a legitimate argument that just the 4 guys we named, along with Jalen Brunson, would be a viable starting 5 you could envision in the NBA.
Yeah.
And they're missing that while going through what run they're going through. Now, many will point to, oh, well, it's Indiana, this, that, and the third. Well, Indiana finished off who was in front of them, and New York took on who they had in front of them as well, and this is where we are now. The New York Knicks are doing this as a hobbled squad. Let's not even forget the fact that Jalen Brunson didn't look right in Game 2, and it kind of hasn't really recovered since then. Well, more so like Game 3, and it hasn't really necessarily recovered since then. But he continues to push through. He continues to make the most out of this opportunity. He clearly realizes that the New York Knicks are on the horizon of something that they have not seen in over 2 decades. And I think he smells blood in the water. I don't think he's going to let them go home that easy.
This Knicks team it's crazy because you look at this team and they have no reason being in the position they're in with the amount of injuries that they have. But like we mentioned, no pun intended, they just got so much heart, man. They got so much heart. The fact that Alec Burks can come into this rotation after not playing for basically a month and average like 15, 16 points a game over the last 3, like it's been absolutely phenomenal what they've been able to do. Jalen Brunson, you could tell he's not 100%, but the way he's been playing this entire playoff run, being one of the leading scorers in the entire association, while missing 5 of his starters, and he's still like in the series averaging 32, 6, and 3. Some amazing work, and I think like the Knicks keep saying this because people like to put this bad image of Tom Thibodeau because you're playing your guys like 40 minutes a night, this and that. Look, man, these guys are built for it. Some guys maybe like if you look at other situations and you could tell that maybe they don't want to be in those situations. These guys live for it, man. You could tell with the attitude, the swagger that they carry themselves with, that they're just ready for prime time and they don't care who's on the floor because they're going to be absolute killers out there. This Pacer team, man, they are very talented. But and we talked about this after the Bucks series. We came out of the Bucks series saying, I still don't think this Indiana Pacers team is a playoff performer. With the situation that they're put in, they're basically healthy. I mean, the only main person they're missing is Benedict Mathurin, but they should be in a much better situation if they were truly a playoff contender. But the thing is, they're not, and a lot of that has to do with some inconsistent play. They don't have the big men to really match the aggressiveness with the Knicks. I mean, the hustle is just night and day between these two teams. And Jay, what's happening to Tyrese Halliburton? Like, he's had some like monstrous games in this series, but then there's also games where he will pass up a wide open layup for a contested 3. Like, what's going on?
I think the biggest thing is you look throughout the entire postseason and TV. We were covering these games on TikTok, and I remember that when I covered the first series between Indiana and the Bucks, my biggest trepidation with Tyrese was the lack of aggression that he was playing with throughout a majority of that Milwaukee Bucks series. And you saw that team, when Tyrese Halliburton was much more aggressive, it changed the dynamic, especially on the offensive end, for how they got up tempo, how they were able to create shots, the confidence in which guys like Andrew Nembhard and others were able to feel like they could hit shots at a high clip all night. And when he chooses to have nights where he wants to only have 9 shot attempts, you feel it. As the Indiana Pacers offense, you feel it when your best player is not aggressive on that side of the ball, knowing that he's also not a defensive playmaker. He's not a guy who's going to be able to get himself going on the defensive end. So his inability to, or his willingness to not take shots is actually making him an even more ineffective player. Another thing that should be noted is TV, even despite the fact that OG Anunoby has not played much in this series, it is notable we haven't heard much from Pascal Siakam throughout this series. That is something that should be said. The biggest thing that's kept Indiana in this series, for the most part, outside of obviously Tyrese Halliburton playing out of his mind through the first 3 games, in terms of just making this entire series super competitive in the early portion, it's the fact that Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell have completely become unhinged on coming off the bench. That's been the biggest key for them in terms of really changing things for them overall. That, and probably the fact that I think they finally understand that Aaron Nesmith has to be the one to guard Jalen Brunson, because Andrew Nembhard just cannot handle it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no answer for Jalen Brunson. I mean, even like with Aaron Nesmith, there isn't. But that's the best chance you got.
Yeah,
putting Aaron Nesmith on him. The Pacers have averaged the most bench points in the entire league this season, so it's no surprise that TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin are providing big roles for them off the bench.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, that is all good and all, but when you come to the playoffs, this is where your best players need to show up. And no matter who they're going to face, whether if they somehow get through the series, they face the Boston Celtics, they face this Knicks team right now, they're going to play the starters 40-plus minutes a game. Now, are they going to be able to combat that with a TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin? Probably not. So it really comes down to, for this Pacers team, that their stars need to show up more. Pascal Siakam in this series, averaging 19, 7, and 3. They need more than that, especially if he's looking for a max contract. Tyrese Halliburton, you want to be considered among the top 5 point guards in the league? You need to attempt more than 9 shots in Game 5. I'm sorry. You're going to have to do more than that. So this Pacers team, they're good. They're well-rounded. They just need to have their stars play like stars. I'd rather have Tyrese Halliburton go 6 for 21 than see him go 5 for 9. I'm sorry. I'd rather see that, because at least I could see that he is trying to score, trying to be aggressive on that basketball court. Whatever he's giving us in these weird spots in this series is unacceptable, especially when you see Jalen Brunson on freaking sometimes one leg, like go for almost 30 shots a game and try to backpack this team into the next round. Unacceptable from the Pacers side of things. And it looks like the Knicks play style, this Knicks way that they're playing right now, is just so good for the playoffs. Very reminiscent of those Miami Heat teams that just slugged their way through the playoffs into the finals. So, man, this Knicks team, even though they're down lots of guys, they still look like a legit threat.
Yeah, I think the main thing for Indiana moving forward, like you said, is that their stars have to play like stars, that being the biggest thing. For the Knicks on the opposite side, I think the biggest thing for them is that they have to just continue to play with physicality. It's the biggest equalizer that the Knicks have, because they're low on talent, because their guys keep going down due to injury. At this point, we're at a point now where the Knicks, the only way they're going to make it to the ECF is off grit alone. Well, I think we understand that. And they may get OG back soon if they're able to get past this series. It depends. But I think the overall circumstances for them right now is that they're not going to be able to out-talent the Indiana Pacers, which feels weird to say, because there was a point when the New York Knicks easily across the board, top to bottom, had a deeper and more talented roster than Indiana coming into the postseason. But the equalizer of injuries has definitely played itself in. Now, I think the biggest thing that helps the Knicks is that this gritty style of basketball is something that's got them through the entire season, so they don't have to change up their identity in order to get one more game.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, they are going to go to Indiana, which they've had some trouble, like, playing very well at compared to, of course, being in New York. Because like I feel like, again, I said in my recaps, when they play in New York, I feel like they play like absolute superheroes over there because that crowd is absolutely nuts. But the Pacers have a chance to tie it up here. But I just feel like even if they get to that point in Game 7, they just have no chance in MSG. But we'll have to wait and see. The Pacers, again, they do have the talent advantage. It's just that talent has to show up and actually try to match that aggressiveness of the New York Knicks. Jay, any thoughts to add before we move on?
No. I mean, it's just another really good series. You just hate that the injuries are kind of taking over for it in terms of the Knicks sides of things. And I mean, we're still getting really good basketball. It's going to be one of those series that I think is still going to be worth the watch. And yeah, I mean, the Knicks are, like you mentioned, you evoked the whole Miami Heat aspect of it. And we spoke about it off pod. There's definitely shades of it, which makes them a really dangerous team because despite the fact that they are injured, there's a team in the Boston Celtics on the other side that we're going to get into in a second that I feel like has been sleepwalking their way through the postseason. And a team like the Knicks is just the kind of team that has the kind of fervor to punch them in the mouth and wake them up.
100%. And that is a good transition to the next series because this is the only series that has finished. The Celtics beat the Cavs 4-1. And it felt like throughout this series, it just became like a lot harder for the Cavs each passing game. I mean, Donovan Mitchell was great the first 3 games. He missed the last 2. No Jared Allen for this entire series. They didn't even have Karis LeVert for the closeout game. They had to rely on Marcus Morris to score 25 for them. Like, this was a freaking disaster series for the Cavs. But they still competed. But let's be honest. Like you mentioned in that last segment, the Celtics kind of sleepwalked through it. What were your thoughts as the Celtics move on to the Eastern Conference Finals in quite easy fashion?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for the Boston Celtics is that, man, how nice is it to just be more talented than most of the teams you face in the postseason? Like,
this is going exactly the way we thought it was.
I mean, no Kristaps Porzingis. Drew Holiday is averaging like 8 points a game and not shooting that well from the 3 ball. You can make the argument that the tiering list of the best players to perform for the Boston Celtics throughout this postseason is Derek White, number 1, Jaylen Brown, number 2, and Jason Tatum, number 3. And the reality is, if we're looking at this team as a championship contender, it should be inverted. But instead, this is the way that they're getting through this postseason. And the fact that they've had matchups like the ones they've had through the first 2 rounds, it definitely helps them out, considering the fact that, you know, not only have they been the more talented team, but then you can make the argument that they've also been the healthier team, even with Kristaps Porzingis missing time. And then on the opposite side of the bracket, you get either Indiana or a hobbled New York Knicks team, despite what I just said about their grit and their intimidation on that side on the defensive side of the ball. You're still getting a team that if they were full strength or even had guys like OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson still on the floor, it changes my feeling on an overall series, as opposed to if the Knicks face the Boston Celtics as currently constructed. I think the series maybe goes 6 off the strength of Jalen Brunson just being too damn good. But I still think it's a series where Boston doesn't necessarily feel as pushed because they're not going up against the best talent that the Knicks have. And same thing goes for Indiana. I think Indiana can't outshoot the Boston Celtics, which is the only way that you can beat them, considering outside of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who you mentioned earlier, across the board, the Boston Celtics were the best 3-point shooting team in the league, and it wasn't close for the most part.
Look, man, I'm not a big fan of Boston Celtics. I don't know if my cadence of the podcast kind of goes towards that, but I understand how great they are as a team. But it's hard for me to really take away what they've done this postseason when the first series they had to go up against that Miami Heat team that could barely score 100 points, and they just walked through that. They go through the series having to face only Donovan Mitchell 3 times, and then him missing the last 2 games, missing Jared Allen. Darius Garland looks like a shell of himself, and they were able just to sleepwalk through this series. I feel like they haven't been challenged yet throughout this entire playoff run. And even like with this next series, like you mentioned, against the New York Knicks, like what you have the overwhelming talent here. The only ways you give this up is if you like freaking Miami Heat it again, where you go up against the Miami Heat, you just get overwhelmed with the physicality and you just stray away from your game. But you've made moves such as getting Drew Holiday, getting Kristaps Porzingis to counteract that. So even though they are gonna go to the Eastern Conference Finals, and sure, this new Knicks team has been fighting so hard throughout this entire playoffs, are the Boston Celtics like even gonna feel challenged? Because it still doesn't feel like they're gonna be challenged until they face off against the Nuggets or whoever they end up facing in the finals.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, unfortunately, unless you're a Boston Celtics fan, watching the ECF has not, I mean, watching the Eastern Conference playoff bracket has not been as exciting as it possibly could be on that side of the bracket. Like, it's been an
Yeah.
exciting postseason. Definitely been an exciting postseason. The Knicks are probably the team that's carrying the Eastern Conference side in terms of excitement factor.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, in terms of Boston, the team that everybody probably picked to come out of the Eastern Conference, we picked them because we understood what their talent was, their overall diversity on both sides of the ball. We picked them for a reason. But you just thought that there was going to be a bit more pushback than this. And when you just come out of a series where you say, damn, you beat the Cleveland Cavaliers where they didn't have Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell didn't play in game 5. And it's like, did we think that they were going to win in 5 to 6 games anyway? Yes. I purposely picked them in 5 games. Why? Because the rule is that Boston doesn't get sweeps, right?
Yes.
That's how it goes. But still, nonetheless, even with that kind of that belief that we have in them coming into the series, I still think it's notable that, like you said, there's just they just haven't been challenged all postseason long. We thought that they were this good, but you just wonder if it's just them. It's a battle of, are they that good, or is it just that the Eastern Conference side of the bracket they've gotten is just not good enough to even remotely make it close?
Yeah, we still have question marks about this team going into it, and it's not because of their talent. It's just because have they really played playoff basketball yet? That's what we're asking ourselves at this very moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about the series, but the fact that the Cavs again just got super unlucky with these injuries. And sure, I mean, shout out to freaking Marcus Morris once again. 25 points, 10 for 13 shooting in that game 5. Evan Mobley, if anyone that needs a freaking shout out from the series, Evan Mobley averaging 21, 13, and 3 blocks per game. This is some of the best games I've seen Evan Mobley play throughout his entire NBA career. But even still, when you're relying on the fact that Evan Mobley's gonna give you leaning on the fact that Evan Mobley's gonna give you 34 points in the elimination game, and you still have to face off against Tatum, Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Al Horford, who had his best game of the playoffs, 22 and 15. What are you supposed to do there if you're the Cavs? There's just no chance.
Yeah, it's tough, man. But shout out to the Celtics. At the end of the day, regardless of what's going on with them, you still have to beat the opponent that's in front of you. Because at the end of the day, we would also be talking mad crap. If Cleveland upset them in the second round, we would also be looking at them and saying, wow, this is a failure of a season. So the flip side is, if you handle your work and you get the job done and you finish the series in 5 games, you still have to give kudos and props at the end of the day, because it's like, hey, you still faced who was in front of you, the same way we give the Knicks credit for taking down a powerhouse in the Philadelphia 76ers, the same way we give Indiana credit for taking down the Milwaukee Bucks, even if they were without Giannis Antetokounmpo and they missed Damian Lillard in the final game, or in game 4. There are circumstances of this where you just have to kind of chalk it up to, okay, but at the end of the day, they got the job done.
Yeah. One quick question before we go on to the postmortems. If the Celtics don't make the finals, is this season a failure?
Easily. I mean, at the end of the day, even without Kristaps Porzingis for most of the postseason, the way that it's been, I mean, they've cakewalked this. There's no other way to put it. They've cakewalked this, and they put themselves in a position where you are unscathed, practically unblemished on the road to the ECF. Whichever team you go up against in the ECF is not more talented than you, and they are not deeper than you. You can make an argument that maybe Indiana is deeper just because their bench is one of the best benches in the NBA, as you noted earlier. But overall, there's no team, whether it's Indiana or New York, that is going to out-talent Boston. Well, guess what? Boston's been out-talenting teams this entire postseason so far. So I don't think that changes with the winner of Indiana versus New York. And so if you don't come out of the ECF, then I mean it's automatically chalked up. I think many would say that this is championship or bust just off of the fact that they've had such an easy run. Now, some would also look at it and say, well, if Denver comes out, or if Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks come out, I think maybe you still would pick Boston to win the series, but I don't think people would pick it with so much convention that they would say that it was a failure of a season if they lose to those teams.
Yeah.
So it depends.
Yeah, what it basically is they should cakewalk the East. We said that since the beginning. We looked at their bracket saying they have a chance to cakewalk it, and so far they are living up to that hype. So if they don't do it, then it's a failure. And the Western Conference Finals, we've seen how great each of the West teams are, so losing to them probably wouldn't be as bad. But you can't deny the fact that if we're talking about the East right now, they have to win it. There's no choice for them.
Yeah. I 100% agree.
Yeah. But yeah, those are all the playoff series we talk about. Let us know down below what you think of all 4 series that we discussed. But Jay, it's been a while since we did this, but we did the postmortems for the Western Conference teams that got eliminated in the last round. Now it's time to do the first round losses for the East, as well as the second round loss, because like we mentioned, the Cavs got eliminated too. And that's where we start off. The Cleveland Cavaliers. Really up and down season for them, finishing with the 4th seed. There's a lot of reports coming out about, Donovan Mitchell questioning this team's maturity. A lot of people not liking the Jamie Bickerstaff form. Them trying to force Jared Allen to play by putting injections in his knees. There's a lot of drama surrounding the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. But give me what you think about the Cavs season as a whole.
I think that the Cleveland Cavaliers have to be happy with the way the season went, considering the fact that they had a lot to deal with, especially from the injury perspective throughout the season. I mean, they saw a lot of different guys go down, and they saw a lot of different guys thrive in the meantime, right? Donovan Mitchell missed time. Darius Garland missed time. Jared Allen missed time. Evan Mobley missed time. And they were able to make the most out of that by finding guys who were able to keep them afloat. Craig Porter Jr. got minutes and really made the most out of it. Sam Merrill played himself back from being Mr. Irrelevant to being like a very viable player through the regular season. Gorgie Jang looked like a solid pickup after the season that he had throughout the regular season. Max Strus, same thing. Like, they were able to do things. And I think on top of all of it, the Cleveland Cavaliers were able to find a certain level of flexibility that they didn't have before, right? With the double bigs, there was a completely different identity that they had that was more built off of trying to play inside-out basketball with a lot more pressure on the rim, a lot more of Jared Allen, Evan Mobley creating a lot of havoc down in the paint, and Donovan Mitchell with Darius Garland driving downhill. When Evan Mobley and Darius Garland were out and it was Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell at the helm, Jared Allen became more of a playmaker. Donovan Mitchell was creating more for others. They were able to get an offense that was built around high volume 3-point shooting, which was something last year we had never associated with the Cleveland Cavaliers. There was a lot of different chameleon-like things that we saw throughout the season that they got to lean on, that they may not have had the opportunity to experience had these injuries not kind of plagued them throughout the regular season. So for them to be able to have the kind of season that they had, yeah, you look at the Magic series and you say, well, wow, you got pushed to 7 games by the Orlando Magic. That's also an Orlando Magic team that, despite how young they were also one of the best defenses in the NBA for most of the year. Yes, they struggled on offense, but if you go back and watch the series, Cleveland struggled on offense as well for most of that series. So it's one of those things where you do look back at that and you say, yeah, even though they struggled through that, that was a series that they were able to come out on top and make the most out of that situation. And losing to Boston, especially when game 5 you're without Donovan Mitchell and you go into the series without arguably your second best player in Jared Allen throughout the entirety of the series, yeah, you say, well, damn, I wish we could have went further. I wish we could have done more. But you also look at the circumstances, you can make an argument that they may have overachieved given a lot of the things they went through during the regular season.
Yeah, I can definitely see it that way. But the way I see the Cavs series this season is, you know exactly what's going to get you far. And what's going to get you far is this whole small backcourt with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. We've mentioned it before. It's just not going to work. I said, I think it was our hot takes video, that I'd potentially trade Donovan Mitchell and try to run it that way. No. Keep Donovan Mitchell as long as you can. Time to trade away Darius Garland. Try to move around some other pieces. You need the one big, you need the guard, and you need to have these shooters around them. That's what got them to that near 20-game winning streak that they had
Mm-hmm.
earlier this season. I just think that this experiment so far with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, along with these two bigs, has been a little bit underwhelming for the talent that they have. So what it really comes down to is that, like, yes, you upgraded your 3 and Max Strus, but you still haven't figured out how to completely like make this lineup fully compatible and have them play at their best. So with Donovan Mitchell is impending free agent in the next season, and the fact that he's the one who's truly like a top 10 player in the league that's on this Cleveland Cavalier team, then it's probably best that they keep him. Maybe choose one of Mobley and Allen at this point. Like you can do a flip, and then try to move off the other guys. I think this Cavs team is just not going to work out moving forward. But you just know the guys now that you want to keep around and you want to keep on for the long term.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of different decisions that they need to make. The biggest one is just figuring out how committed Donovan Mitchell is, because I think that you can't just trade Darius Garland unless you're sure that you know that Donovan Mitchell is committed, and vice versa, right? I don't think you can trade Donovan Mitchell unless you're sure that Darius Garland is somebody that you can go move forward with this kind of unit and still be able to make, legitimate runs and continue to build on what Cleveland has been able to kind of compound over the last couple of seasons. So they have a lot of different decisions to make. Obviously, E-Mob is another one that if you got to pay him, you look at Jared Allen. Do you consider Jared Allen expendable? Do you consider E-Mob as somebody that might be expendable with the way that Jared Allen was able to have an all-star caliber season this year in a way that's different than the way we saw him back when he was with Brooklyn or even in the earlier tenure last season with Cleveland. Like, we got to see him in a completely different element as a passer and as a offensive playmaker, not necessarily creating for himself, but creating for others this season. We got to see a different side of him when it was just him in the lineup as opposed to him and Evan Mobley next to each other. We know the defense is going to be elite when they both are on the floor, but the defense wasn't the problem this year. The offense was the problem. Now, there's a give and a take. If you lose E-Mob and you lose out on the defense, that the offense make up for that. In some instances, I thought during the regular season, it definitely did. In the postseason, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It really depends.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of there's going to be a lot of decisions being made for the Cavs team, and if we look forward to maybe late October, this team can look a whole lot different. But we'll have to see how this whole offseason shapes out. All right, moving on to the next East team, and we're going to go now to the first round eliminations. The Orlando Magic, a team where I'm going to admit, Jay, you were super high on this team since the preseason, but I even think that they exceeded your expectations moving on to the 5th seed. Paolo Banchero taking that next leap. This defense being one of the best that in this entire NBA. This team exceeded all expectations. Jay, what was your thoughts on the Magic this year?
No, that's the best way to summarize it. Like, at the end of the day, I thought this team was going to be good. I came into the season saying this is the team I'm hitching my wagon to. Like, I try to do this every single year. Like, the year before the Nuggets won the championship, the Nuggets were my team. Last year, for example, the Sacramento Kings was that team for me. This year, it was the Orlando Magic that I thought was going to take that next step in the right direction with Paolo Banchero in year 2, and we saw it. Paolo Banchero had a very strong postseason. He might have been the best offensive player in that series outside of Donovan Mitchell. Like, I think that they definitely went tit for tat in a way where he solidified himself as a guy who can be considered a best player in a series, not just because he's the best player on his team, but because he's legitimately an all-star caliber talent that can go tit for tat with another all-star caliber talent. We saw that in this postseason. At the end of the day, you also got to see strides from players that you needed to get information on. Jalen Suggs had a breakout year this year. Guess what?
All defense.
He's definitely an all-defensive player. I 100% agree. And also, more importantly, we needed to see that the offensive side of the ball could come for him this year because we knew the all-defensive capabilities were there dating back a season ago, right? When we were talking about the end of the year for the Orlando Magic where they were a top 7 defense after the All-Star break a year ago. We saw shades of this from Jalen Suggs. The issue that we were wondering about was, can he be a floor spacer? Can he be a guy who can generate some kind of offense from three-point shooting to make himself viable enough that the defense is worth keeping him on the floor, because we know we go on offense, he's not a complete liability. He proved that to us this year, right? Franz Wagner still has some developing to do, especially as an outside shooter, but his ability to ball handle, we saw something from him that really opened things up. TV, we got to see Jonathan Isaac play basketball. We got to see Jonathan Isaac play basketball this year. You see what I'm saying? There's certain things that the Orlando Magic just want to be able to see coming into this season. I'm sure they wanted to see these different milestones achieved coming into this season. They got to check off a lot of boxes this year, and now they're going to get to go into the offseason where, sure, you have to make some tough decisions. Do you bring back Cole Anthony? Do you bring back a Markelle Fultz? Do you make a swing for a guy like an Anthony Simons, like a Tyrese? Not Tyrese. Like a Trae Young, a Klay Thompson? Even are you one of the teams that decides, look, we have enough defensive backing, let's trade for Josh Giddey, right? Yeah. Even that's a more low end version, right? Yeah. But he's a guy who can create offense in terms of being able to distribute the ball. And that's all that the Orlando Magic need, is a guy who can keep the offense steady in a sense of being able to help get the ball to the guys who need the ball. That's been the most interesting thing about guys like Josh Giddey being associated with a team like the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs didn't know how to get Victor the dang ball. So you get a guy like Josh Giddey who knows how to get the ball to the guys who need it. The same thing could work for a team like the Orlando Magic. So the Orlando Magic have a lot of different opportunities this summer that they can kind of build upon before they have to go, start really paying guys. And that's all you can ask for as a young team that is about to get expensive and needs to get some evaluations out of the way, so that they can start making the real decisions that are going to help them move forward and get better as they go along.
Yeah, this team skipped 2-3 years in a rebuild, and they didn't even without even really doing too much to the roster. That is a testament to coaching, the scouting department, their developmental staff. This team has taken it to levels that we didn't think that they were able to take yet. We thought that this team could maybe compete for a play-in spot. They were literally the Thunder East, where they just were teams were not even in the play-in picture, and then jump into, with the Thunder, they were at the number 1 seed in the West. But the Magic almost got home court advantage in the playoffs, so in the first round. So a lot of great things to take away from this season. We know that Paolo Banchero's it. Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs kind of went out the playoffs sad, but we know that there's a lot of promise with those two guys. This team needs to just develop some offensive creation, some offensive options that are away from Franz Wagner, away from Paolo Banchero. I think they have the assets to do so, and they have a lot of young guys around this team that could play very good role player minutes for them. So very excited for this team going forward. It just all depends on how aggressive they want to be this offseason. Do they want to spend a bag? Do they want to maybe make a trade instead? Do they stick with what they have? Who knows? But I do see a very bright future with this team.
Yeah, I'm so proud of the Orlando Magic this season, not just because this is a team that I hitched my wagon to this year, but because this is a team that I think has real capabilities to make real strides with the kind of capital they have, the kind of players they already have on the roster, and the kind of things that they can do moving forward. And shout out to Jamal Mosley. He didn't win Coach of the Year. He wasn't even as big in the running as I thought maybe he was deserving of being. But, I mean, to get a young team to defend at this level is huge. But then to get a young team to also be able to play high-level basketball in a 7-game series against a guy in Donovan Mitchell who is a well-renowned all-star guard and a dude known for having strong postseason series, that was big in a year where I think a lot of people might have been optimistic about the Orlando Magic, but again, definitely not viewing them as highly regarded as, for example, this season turned out to be.
Yeah, 100%. All right, man. Let's move on to the next team in the East, and we gotta talk about the Miami Heat. We thought that they might make another run at it. Jimmy Butler gets hurt, Terry Rozier gets hurt, and now they're in a situation where it feels like they're like the Lakers, where they just have to run it back. They really can't make too many changes to this roster. What are your thoughts on the Heat season?
I don't know how to feel about the Miami Heat, to be honest with you. I mean, at the end of the day, for them, they're a team that I don't know. They're not as bad in terms of purgatory as like a team like the Los Angeles Lakers or like the Phoenix Suns, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got real questions. I mean, their tax bill is gonna make it where like, are they gonna be able to bring back Haywood Highsmith, who, if you know when it comes to Miami Heat, right? In terms of what he's able to do as a 3-and-D wing for them. Same thing with Jimmy Butler. Like, this was a weird season for him where he was not very available during the regular season. And then when the postseason came around, he also was not available. And that's the thing about the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat are always going to be that team that we think is the sleeping giant just waiting to conquer the Eastern Conference. But there's going to come a point, and I think we're slowly but surely starting to creep on that point where them just trying to like ease their way through the regular season and just pray that Jimmy Butler will be ready for the postseason because we know who playoff Jimmy is. I think there's going to be a point where that starts to run low. And I think this was the first season of seeing the repercussions of how things go when that doesn't work. What happens when Jimmy Butler doesn't play for most of the regular season and he's not available for the postseason? Now you're not a viable team. Yeah, they ran into the Boston Celtics, who they might have ended up losing to even if Jimmy Butler was healthy. But it's the fact that you never will know because of circumstances like this one. And no one can predict injuries, but we do know that Jimmy Butler has a significant injury history. So it's not something that you can just deter from. It's not something that you could just discount fully because there is a lot of signs from this season that we've seen in the past. We've doubted the Heat in the past for these same reasons. This is just the first year where they actually got bit in the ass for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're like the Lakers. At least the Lakers stayed healthy for most part this season, but the Heat are just relying on the fact that they're able to run back exactly what they did in previous years. This whole system of them just picking up these random role players from the scraps of free agency, investing a lot of your money again, you still have Jimmy, you got Bam and all that, but the fact that you do all of this and you're just hoping that the stars are able to carry you, it's not going to work every year. Not only did they not have Jimmy and Terry Rozier this year, they also missed out on free agency. They lost Gabe Vincent, they lost Max Strus. They were coming to the series into the season missing some key pieces to that finals roster. So they're hanging on the facts like, oh, we're gonna just keep finding these diamonds in the roughs, and these guys are just gonna perform when we need them to. That's not gonna happen every year, especially when Jimmy Butler gets injured in a freaking play-in game. So yeah, this Miami Heat team, they've kind of hitched themselves to this wagon, and there's not much wiggle room in this. Like, what's the thing? What's the next move? They're probably gonna move off Tyler Hero. What are you gonna get back for him? And is that gonna even be enough production to replace his 21 points off the bench? I don't know, but this Miami Heat team, they're always gonna be a threat every year if Jimmy's healthy. But they're so they have this thing where one small not small mistake, but an injury or something derails their season, and that's gonna mess with everything else.
Yeah, I agree that the margin for error.
That's what it is, margin for error. Yeah.
That's the best way to phrase it. The margin of error for the Miami Heat moving forward with this Jimmy Butler window is closing significantly. And we have to remember that Jimmy Butler is also, I believe, a year away from a player option, but I think he's actually up for possibly negotiating a contract extension as early as this summer. And if you listen to the words of Pat Riley in their exit meeting, it doesn't sound like that's a conversation they're ready to have right now, which I do think is very telling about what could be the future for Jimmy Butler in a Miami Heat uniform.
Right, 100%. I mean, what did he say after the postseason? Pat Riley's like, "Oh, this guy should stop talking because we're not even on the court in these playoffs or something like that." So, yeah, there definitely could be tensions there. There definitely could be a lot of changes to Miami Heat team moving forward, especially because maybe it's time to move to build around Bam, this and that. So we don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe our window has closed. It's probably have closed at this point, but this Miami Heat team, they're the type of team where whenever we count them out, they always seem to prove us wrong eventually. So we'll see what happens next year, but again, not that hopeful. Moving on to the next team, though, we have a couple more teams to talk about here. The Philadelphia 76ers. Embiid missed for half the season. This team was like a top 2 seed, dropped all the way down to the play-in, and honestly had a chance to get the New York Knicks, but to no avail. This Knicks team is just too scrappy. Dylan Brunson is too good. And in the 76ers, again, another disappointing playoff exit.
Philly's tricky because on one side you could say, well, Joel Embiid was dealing with normal Joel Embiid problems, which again gives us an out to say that if he were healthy, things would be different. The flip side of you would say Tyrese Maxey emerged to an all-star caliber guard this year, literally did make the all-star team and solidified himself as the 2 in a 1-2 punch that could be, as easy as top 3, top 4 in the Eastern Conference next year, right? So there's a lot to kind of take away from this year. I think the biggest thing for Philly fans is you found out that Tyrese Maxey really is that guy. Like, don't get me wrong. I think we had that belief a season ago, but seeing James Harden leave and seeing Tyrese Maxey respond by stepping up in the way that he did this past season, I think that's something that is really encouraging. The flip side of that is this team was really bad when Joel Embiid was out.
Bad. They were bad.
Which really shows you the limitations of this squad outside of Joel Embiid playing at an MVP level, even if Tyrese Maxey is going to be as good as he's been. Now, you have a couple of different things that you can work with. Nicholas Batum, according to his wife, this was his last year, so we might not see him anymore.
Yeah.
Tobias Harris, he's going to be wearing red, white, and blue, but I think a different kind of red, white, and blue, because a lot of people are kind of saying that he's on his way to Detroit.
That is the MVP of this whole situation. The fact that you finally get out of the Tobias Harris money.
So there's that. The funny part about them now is you got a lot of cap space that's projected on your books. Who do you go after? Do you throw a bag at LeBron James for a year or two and just see what a LeBron James, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid trifecta looks like? I mean, it's not the craziest thing in the world. LeBron James can't be the best player on a championship team anymore. I don't believe. But can he be your second or third best player on a championship caliber roster with Daryl Morey as the GM, who's a star hunter for real?
Yeah.
Maybe. Paul George is the guy that everybody says is the seamless fit for Philadelphia, considering the fact that the LA Clippers, they don't look like they're going anywhere right now.
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard continues to be injured. This roster can't necessarily get any more expensive than it already is. I mean, they throw max money at basically anybody who can make a basket, right? So the Clippers are kind of just going to be going into next season looking exactly like how they did this year. And guess what? That didn't do very much for them this year. So next year, having a new stadium with a lot of toilets in it isn't going to change the production on the floor. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where a lot of people are saying that maybe Paul George, if he's focused on the idea of winning a championship, Philly is a destination for him. But once you get past those two guys, the star hunting gets very, very, it gets tricky. Like, Are you going to lure Pascal away from Indiana after what they've been able to do this postseason? Are you going to be able to lure OG Anunoby away from the New York Knicks, considering that the Knicks were like unstoppable anytime that OG Anunoby was on the floor, and he's a CAA client, which always kind of helps because we know the New York Knicks, when it comes to CAA guys, they get their man, so to speak. You know what I mean? So that list after guys like Paul George and LeBron James, it gets light. You're not bringing James Harden back. You're not bringing Russell Westbrook in. Does Klay Thompson change life for you? I don't think so. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because they can, in theory, get better. How much better, though? It's going to come down to money management, for real.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been a while since they had this type of money available in their books. And with Daryl Morey at the helm, you know that he's going to make some big-time moves. So I think the fact that you know what you got there with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, it's about just trying to build around those two. You know that if Batum is available to come back next year, I know you said that his wife is saying otherwise, but if Batum is able to come back, especially with the impact he's made in the playoffs, you bring him back. honestly bring back Kelly Oubre as well, because I think he's a perfect fit next to those guys. It's all about the third star, though. You're 100% right. Are they gonna throw it back to even someone like DeMar DeRozan? Like who? Like what's gonna happen there? I don't know if that's really gonna be the move, but the 76ers have a lot of different avenues to go to, and I think this is good because of the lack of moves that they had available for them over the last couple of years. So now they have kind of a bit more financial freedom. They have a chance to restart, and they have their two guys under contract. So what happens past that, I don't know. But we know that they have these two guys, and Daryl Morey has basically a lot of space on this canvas to deal with the rest of the team. So excited for what this team is able to do. Again, I don't know if Joel Embiid can be that number one guy for a championship team just because of his availability on the court. But you can't help but be excited for this team, especially with the emergence of Tyrese Maxey.
I mean, just to kind of close things off, Philly is in a good spot.
They're in a good spot.
They're in a good spot. They definitely are. It's just gonna come down to whether or not they are able to make this money shake. If they can get a star, whether it's Paul George or LeBron James, it goes a long way. If they're able to break down the money and just get guys who just all perfectly seamlessly fit next to Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, kind of similar.
Dog. That might be the
move. And it might end up to, honestly, TV, when you look at the lack of stars in this free agency class, it might be their best option as well.
Right.
So, but here's the thing: Nicholas Batum, Kelly Oubre, Melton when he was healthy. Like when you go down the list of guys that they did have, like there are archetypes of these dudes across the league. So they can replicate a lot of what made them so good this year. There's just certain aspects of it that they're going to need to upgrade on. Like, for example, a shot maker like Malik Monk. Do you throw him some money, considering the fact that outside of Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, it seemed like nobody could really create offense for themselves for the Sixers this year? You know what I mean? Those kind of on the margin moves where you get a notable name. It's just maybe not the guy that's like screaming at the top of the list when you think about a Philly team that obviously is still looking for that first ECF, berth in forever.
Yeah, the fact that they haven't made an Eastern Conference Finals with Joel Embiid is absolutely crazy to think about. But with the way the 76ers, like how their seasons have ended, kind of makes sense. But yeah, lots of room for this team to grow. It's just all about making the right moves. Final team we have to talk about here in the East is the Milwaukee Bucks. To be honest, I don't know how to feel about this season. I feel like we didn't get the full Damian Lillard, Giannis experience. I think going forward with a new training camp, that's going to be very, it's going to be very key to see how they start off the season next year. But I think the biggest question is all of the other guys around them. How did you feel about the season?
Oh man. Actually, can we flip this around? Can you answer the question first? Just because I want your thoughts, because I'm still struggling.
I think this team is getting too old, man. I think this team is like, yes, they have their core guys from the championship team, and they're still an effective bunch, by the way. Chris Middleton showed this playoffs that he still got some juice left in him. Brook Lopez, yes, he did look old at times, but he still has that defensive prowess. Bobby Portis is still a freaking like one of the best 6-man in the league. I think you keep him around. But you just got to get younger a little bit. You got to get a little bit more athletic. And I think there has to be moves made here. I mean, they had a chance to open up some money when the Houston Rockets tried to sign Brook Lopez off of them last year, but they decided to try to run it back with this group of guys. And man, at times of the season and even in the playoffs, this team felt slow. They didn't feel ready to compete with some of this younger talent here. And when Giannis goes down and you have these guys running the team, it just doesn't look great. I think kind of like the Philadelphia 76ers, they just kind of have to rework their team to a point where they just got to get pieces around them. It doesn't matter about getting that third star. It doesn't matter getting like that all-star level player next to them. Like there have been like, rumors about them, maybe getting Zach LaVine in the past, about getting this player or that player. It's not about that. It's about trying to get younger, trying to get this team better defensively, and maybe just being able to defend, especially on the defensive end, which we're so used to this Milwaukee Bucks team being one of the best defensive teams in the league, and somehow, some way, they've dropped like tremendously. And of course, that has to do a lot with the missing piece that is Drew Holiday. But still, they dropped off significantly on that end of the floor. So what it really comes down to with this Milwaukee Bucks team is making sure that they make the moves that extends their window. Because the more and the longer you keep this team, the window is going to slowly shut and shut. And I know these guys help you win a championship, but there's a time to move on.
I think now that you phrase it that way, I think the biggest thing, number one, 100% correct. They're just getting old, and it's killing them. It's killing them. They are getting old, and it's definitely hurting them. Chris Middleton had to basically pull out a max size inhaler throughout that entire series because there was a portion of that series where we didn't even think he was going to be available. And he ended up putting together a real Herculean effort, and it was huge. It was huge for them. But at the end of the day, like you said, I think there comes a point where when you look at a Brook Lopez, you look at a Bobby Portis, you look at the fact that your only young talent is like Marjon Beauchamp, right?
Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, like you look at the youth that you do have on the team, or maybe just evaluating the fact that there's such a lack of youth on your team. No. TV, let's rephrase it. Yes, they're old, but here's the real issue. This is what killed them against Indiana. It's not that they're old. They lack athleticism. Because if you realize in that series, outside of the insane shot making from Chris Middleton, one of the most intriguing people to watch in that series against Indiana was Andre Jackson Jr.
Yeah,
it was like when he came on the floor defensively, not necessarily offensively, but when he came on the floor defensively, there was a completely different dynamic. There was a completely different dynamic to him, adding something that they don't have across the rest of the roster with him just being an athlete. I think there's not too many times, unless you're the Oklahoma City Thunder of like the 2017 to 2019 range, where you just say, go after the most intriguing athlete tool guys.
Yeah.
But I think that's just what Milwaukee needs to do. I think Milwaukee just needs some dudes who have some athleticism and some
juice,
tools.
bro. They need some juice to add to that defense because, man, everyone looks slow on that team.
I mean, TV, I think a perfect example, and it's not an apples to apples comparison, but I think an interesting comparison for Milwaukee in a way is the night and day influence of the Dallas Mavericks deciding to get Derek Lively, Derrick Jones Jr., still having Josh Green, right?
Yeah.
Still putting themselves in position to go after a Daniel Gafford, right? Did you go down the list? Like, I just named 4 dudes who their main thing is we are freak talents athletically. And it changed their season because they had a different pop, a different dynamic where a Kyrie Irving likes to run the floor. But guess what? Now we have gazelles who will come run with him. This makes it where the game speeds up, and it makes guys like Luka Doncic, who's notoriously known for not playing in transition at a high level, it even sped him up a little bit offensively this year, right? I think the same thing could be said for a Milwaukee Bucks team where they just need to get an influx of athletic talent to just give them, you use the perfect word for it, juice, just the injection of something to say, guys, let's get up and down the floor and let's run. Let's go ahead and make easy baskets. Let's not make everything a half-court, tough shot-making game. Dame, we know you can make tough shots. Chris, we know you can make shots. Brooke, we know your splash mountain. Bobby, we know that your turnaround jumper is Carmelo-esque, right? When you're really going, right? We understand all of that. But guess what they all have in common? They're all hard baskets. And if all we're going to do is play offense where outside of Giannis, offense comes difficult, it's going to be hard to get back to where they once were, which is getting out of the Eastern Conference and playing for a championship.
That Dallas Mavericks example is really interesting because they were able to move off of Kristaps Porzingis, Dorian Finney-Smith, and all these guys, and be able to bring, again, a lot of athletes onto the roster, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And that completely changed the way. You see how they're playing against the OKC Thunder. This is one of the youngest teams in the league, and even though you have a team led by Kyrie and Luka, they're able to still match them athletically. That's just the type of change that the Milwaukee Bucks need. So I like that sort of moves potentially. I mean, at the end of the day, you still got Damian Lillard on a long-term deal. You still got Giannis Antetokounmpo, who committed to your team for like 4 or 5 years. It's about now moving with the times and just making sure you make the most out of the years that these two guys have. You brought in these two guys for a reason. Everyone else should be, I wouldn't say like a rotating circle, but making sure that they are molded, the rest of the roster is molded for these two specifically.
Yeah.
That roster that they had 3 years ago was great for the team that they had then, a bit younger, especially led by like Giannis and Drew Holiday. But this new team, and especially with the way this league's going, no, this team is just not going to be working.
Milwaukee's in a weird spot, man. Compared to Philly, who we just talked about, where there was a little bit more optimism and it just came down to just making interesting moves on the margins. Milwaukee,
they're locked into a lot of these guys. They're locked into a lot of them.
And they're going to have to make some tough calls because the guys they're locked in, you got to think about Milwaukee, where it is and who they are as a franchise. This is a franchise, for example, that paid Bobby Portis because when guys want to stay at Milwaukee, Milwaukee returns the favor. So now to turn around and look at Bobby Portis as a trade chip, I don't think that's going to be easy for their front office, right? Yeah. I know many will say, well, Drew Holiday helped them win a championship and they flipped him. There's certain things where you're willing to make that move. When a Damian Lillard is part of the phone call, I think you make that call. But is moving Bobby Portis for an on-the-margin set of guys to kind of add to their depth, is that something they're as enthusiastic about compared to grabbing a Dame Lillard? I don't think so. And that means the math changes. So they're in a weird spot compared to a lot of the other teams in the Eastern Conference. The East is catching up. The West has never been as good as it is right now, in my opinion. And man, that means that we got a lot of good basketball coming up for the foreseeable future. Like, man, I know we're talking about the playoffs right now, but TV 2024, 2025, man, we're talking second season. We're talking second season Wembanyama, Ja Morant's return. In the Eastern Conference, we're going to see if the Detroit Pistons have a pulse after this offseason. The Atlanta Hawks could look different. Like,
the Raptors are getting healthy again, so that's good.
And the Raptors picked a lane, and we felt the effects of it a little bit this year, but they had to do all the dirty work this year. But next year is the first official year of them really picking the lane now, right? Yeah. There's even the Chicago Bulls. I think that this offseason is going to tell us if they pay DeMar, guess what? We're looking to play long term. If they keep Zach, we're looking to play long term. Lonzo Ball says he feels 70%, which is huge considering the fact that he hasn't played in 2 years. So the hope is after one more offseason, he'll be 100% and back on the floor if you're an optimistic Bulls fan like myself. Like, there's a lot of different storylines in the East and the Western Conference, but bringing it back to the Bucks for an older roster like that means you're on borrowed time.
Yeah, 100%. But, I mean, they still got Giannis. They still got Dave. That's a good basis. It's about trying to make the moves around the perimeter. And that's going to be the real test for the Milwaukee Bucks front office. But, yeah, those are our postmortems for the Eastern Conference. Let us know down below what you guys think of all of them. And if you if you have any thoughts on anything else from this episode, from the playoff series and everything like that, let us know down below what you guys think. Jay, it is time for us to move on to the next segment of this draft. The next segment of the show, and it is the draft. So we did a 2013 draft last time. We are now moving into 2014. And we talked about how last time this draft was kind of tough. This draft is a lot easier to choose guys from. There's some all-star names here, some MVP. We have an MVP guy in this draft as well. Jay, how do you feel about this pool of players we have to choose from?
We're starting to get closer and closer to that area of me, like, starting to cover the NBA draft. And I look back at a handful of the names of these guys, and I'm just like, wow. There's a lot of dudes that was in 2014 draft class that I was super high on that did pan out, and a lot of them that didn't. But nonetheless, when you go across the board, I think we both can get a pretty solid starting five.
We're gonna have some damn good teams, to be completely honest. Looking at even just some of the guys you can get in the 8th, like in our 9th picks, there's gonna be some damn good guys to choose from here. But yeah, you know how these drafts go. Jay gets the first pick, I get the next two, and we run things serpentine style. Jay, first overall pick. It's gonna be one of two guys. Who are you gonna go with?
Hey man, we're gonna get the guy who deserved to have his name actually called during a time that wasn't a Taco Bell commercial. Let me get my guy Nikola Jokic, the best player in the NBA, man. Come on.
No, I really want. I was hoping again maybe this guy would look at the second round. Of course, people are gonna remember that Jokic was drafted in fucking 41st pick, best second round pick of all time. Let's be completely honest. But yeah, Nikola Jokic was the easy guy off the board, and I'm gonna go with the second easiest guy because we also have another MVP in this draft class, and that is one Mr. Joel Embiid. So we're gonna take this modern day rivalry and bring it on to this draft. So I'm taking Joel Embiid, and then my next draft pick. Now there is a world where I could be petty because we know that there's someone else in this draft that would work perfectly next to Nikola Jokic. There is one guy who it is like a perfect match. But there's also just better individual talents. But am I petty enough to move away from that? Potentially. I will say that. Or I could go for your heart. And I don't mind going for your heart too. But at the same time, I think that this guy would just fit well next to Joel Embiid too. And I am going to go the petty route. Give me Aaron Gordon.
Oh, wow. Okay. Dang. I was hoping he would fall a little bit later.
I think the way he has turned himself into a defensive menace, compared to just like that athletic guy on Orlando, and becoming one of the best perimeter wings in the league. I think him and Joel Embiid would work very well next to each other.
Well, that's cool. What I'm actually going to do in response to that is I'm going to grab the guy who was the blueprint for the Denver Nuggets going after an Aaron Gordon. Let me go back to the second round. Let me get Jeremy Grant.
Jeremy Grant, okay. Not a bad choice. I like that pickup.
And then the second guy. Come on, man. We knew he was going to come off the board for me eventually. I'm going to get Zach LaVine. I'm gonna get him. It was built in the code. Come on now.
I'm just thinking about it, and I'm looking through this draft, and we know that there's a guy there who is very infamous on our podcasts.
TV. That's why I said this was like one of the first years that I started really paying attention to the NBA draft, and one of the first guys that pointed out to me was a guy that during the draft I was high on, but if you listen to this podcast enough, you probably wouldn't believe that.
Yeah, it's low key. You know what? My next two picks, I'm gonna take Marcus Smart.
Whoa.
And I'm gonna go Bogdan as my next two.
Dang, you couldn't bring yourself to do it. He couldn't bring himself to do it.
I'm gonna go Marcus Smart and Bogdan as my next two picks.
Bogdan's good though. That's a good pick though. And Marcus Smart for extra defense with the unit that you've already got. Oh man, that's nuts.
Jay.
Holy cow.
Jay.
Hey, it's not gonna be me, brother. Let me tell you that much.
What do you mean?
It won't be me, brother.
No, even in a draft where he's like one of the only guys who was like a multiple-time All-NBA player, we can't even bring himself to do it.
Nah, man. First off, let me get Andrew Wiggins. Yeah, we're gonna get Andrew Wiggins, and then Oh my God, TV. I'm just having flashbacks, dude, because
Yeah.
this draft, oh my gosh. Ooh.
Uh,
I think this really was the first, like, the last draft was the first draft I was really like tuned into. But this is the first draft where like I had guys, like there were like
yeah.
actual dudes that were not UNC players that like I actually was attached to.
Yeah.
And now just going through the list, we'll talk about them after the draft
Yeah.
is actually done. But wow, there are a handful of guys that like I was so high on that like Jesus
Right.
Christ.
Who's your final pick, though? Are you gonna leave him on the board?
Hey man, I've been in the second round all day. Let me get Spencer Dinwiddie at the 1.
Oh, J.
Hey man, he's not gonna be on my team. He won't be on my team. No offense to him. He'd probably be very helpful for the New York Knicks right now, but
He would be very, very helpful for the New York Knicks.
I'm cool, man. I'm good.
Jay, low key, if you didn't take Wiggins, I would have done it. But
Hey.
now I'm put in this position. I'm gonna have to go overseas, man. I'm gonna have to go overseas because we have a man with one of the most synonymous last names with the NBA, a man who is an absolute legend, going into the second round. Let me get the Nas. No, I can't.
Oh,
I can't do it.
bro, I'm not gonna lie, bro. I was looking through the second round. I was like, wait a minute, he can't be serious. Wait a minute, he can't be serious. Bruno Caboclo? I was so confused.
No,
I was like, TV, you're not that much of a homer. Like, wait a minute.
no, I'm not taking either Bruno Caboclo or Thanasis. I'll take Julius. I'll take Julius.
Hey, man.
I don't want to put Aaron Gordon at the 3, but things have to. There's sometimes talent is too hard, but Julius Randle is the last pick of our draft. and in the most hit your free throws way possible, we've got Julius Randle into the lineup.
Oh my gosh, true.
Oh man, Jay, this is our 2014 draft team. Who do you have on yours?
All right, for my 2014 NBA draft team, I went with Spencer Dinwiddie at the 1, Zach LaVine at the 2, Andrew Wiggins at the 3, Jeremy Grant at the 4, Nikola Jokic at the 5.
Hey man, these are 2 damn good rosters. Low key, we might have slept. Julius Randle might be the freaking the missing piece in this lineup. So in my lineup, I got Marcus Smart at the 1, former Defensive Player of the Year. We got Bogdan at the 2. We got Aaron Gordon at the 3. Julius Randle at the 4. Joel Embiid at the 5.
And it's still a nasty team though. Like
Nasty.
you got to be honest, it is still like a nasty team. Like even with Aaron Gordon at the 3, like you gotta like the versatility. Like I gotta admit,
like it.
You gotta like the versatility.
I do. I feel like my team, besides Bogdan, is a bunch of guys that can't shoot the basketball, but you don't really want them shooting the basketball from 3, if you know what I mean. Like it's one of those type of teams. But I think my team is pretty good. Jay, how do you feel about your drafted team?
I mean, I definitely can't complain. I mean, obviously Julius Randle was like the low-hanging fruit in this draft because he was the guy that I feel like either one of us definitely should have considered. So the fact that you grabbed him, I mean, it made sense. I think there was no way that he was gonna go out of this draft without being picked up, unless we were just trying to be petty for the sake that we always give him, because we always give him hell or whatever. But TV, can I just go down the list real quick of guys in this draft that I was just like super high on? Because like this was I keep saying it because it's just like so reminiscent right now. Yeah. But like I thought Jabari Parker was the best player in this draft when the time came. And obviously that played out completely different than, what I expected back then. Another guy I was like super high on, Cleanthony Early out of Wichita State, had a cup of coffee in the NBA as part of the New York Knicks. I think he might have played a little bit longer than that. I could actually check while I'm right here. No, it was pretty much just a cup of coffee with the Knicks for 2 years. But he was a guy that I was like super big on at the time. And just didn't really get a whole lot done while a part of the league. I really liked Kyle Anderson. I think Kyle Anderson has been good, but what I thought he was is a big wing coming out of UCLA, and what he's kind of been, definitely two different things. Slow-mo is definitely still slow-mo for sure.
Yeah.
But he just does it in a way that's a lot different from what I thought he was going to be capable of in the NBA. And then Gary Harris. Loved Gary Harris coming out of Michigan State. I think the only thing with him is just like after leaving Denver, he just never was able to really conjure up a lot of the things that we liked. He's been good with good with Orlando, but he also hasn't played much with Orlando.
Yeah,
overall.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's still, honestly, this draft had a lot of guys who are still like solid NBA players that could have made a case to be on any of our teams. We did mention someone like Dario Saric, a TJ Warren, Yusuf Nurkic, like you mentioned, Gary Harris. Capella could have been someone chosen as well.
That's
Joe Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Clarkson, former six-man of the year, deep into that second round as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of solid guys on this draft. So there's definitely even some guys that if you want to build out like 8-man rotations, solid, you could do a draft with these guys. But let's know down below what you guys think. Who had the better draft? Is it myself? Was it Jay? Who won this draft battle? Jay, it is time for the final segment of the show, and it's time for the NBA quiz. And Jay, I mentioned to you a bit beforehand. Shout out to Kenny Beecher because one of his videos, he did sort of similar thing. And this sort of quiz is called Odd Man Out. So,
okay.
What we're going to do is I'm going to give you a category. There's going to be 4 guys in this category, and one of them doesn't belong. I'm going to give you about 5 or 6 of these, and let's see how well you're going to do.
Okay.
And this is all dealing with stats of this season.
This season. Okay. Perfect. Now, okay. I've been watching hoops. Let's see if I've been all the way tacked in. Let's see.
Yeah, all regular season stuff. So, first question. Who's the odd man out for guys with 2 or more 50-point games this year? So, we have Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brunson, or Steph Curry. Who's the odd man out?
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's a list. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I think Joel's had a 50. I'm just gonna go with my gut because I feel like if I talk it out too long, I'm gonna scare myself. I think the odd man out is Steph.
And you are correct.
Oh my God, let's go.
Odd man out, 150-point game this year. Tyrese Maxey got one, I think, in the final week. You got 2 from Jalen Brunson. And again, 2 for Joel Embiid as well. Even though he only played like 30-something games, he had a 50-pointer and a 70-point game. Remember that. He also had a 70-point game. So, yeah, pretty crazy.
You said Maxey had 2 as well, right?
Yeah, he had 2. He had one like that 50-point game. I think it was like in February. Then he had one like in the last week of the season.
Got you. Okay, I remember the earlier one. The second one was the reason why I was a little scared to pick Steph. But yeah, with the gut.
Steph Curry. Steph Curry was the right answer. All right, let's see if you can go 2 for 2. Not including Tyrese Halliburton on this list. Who has had an 18-assist game this year? So Tyrese Halliburton is not on this list because he had like 3.
Yeah.
But, So here are the 4 options. Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Trae Young, and Emmanuel Quickley.
Wait a minute. I feel like because Emmanuel Quickley is here, something don't sound right. Something about that don't sound right. Because that's tricky, man, because
all these guys are elite playmakers. Then you have Emmanuel Quickley.
Yeah. But I feel like he's not just there. No way. Okay, we got to go with the gut again. Okay, you said it's Luka, Nikola, Trae, Emmanuel Quickley, right?
Yes.
I think it's got to be... Dang it. I think it's Trae Young.
And you are correct. 2 for 2 so far.
Go.
Trae Young had a 17-assist game earlier this year. But I did this question because I remembered Emmanuel quickly against the Charlotte Hornets. This is one of the few Raptor games I saw at the end of the year. This man had like 18 assists. Like
What
he was,
the heck?
yeah,
His name being thrown in, it just felt too like, I don't know, man. He just couldn't have been the one just because he was in the list.
yeah. He was
What
one of the
the
things where it's like
heck?
he's too obscure that he had to have made it somehow.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
what the heck? Okay, cool.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go three
Damn.
for three, Jay. Let's go 3 for 3.
All right, all
All
right.
right. Players with 150 or more blocks this year. There's a bunch of them, but one of these guys don't make the list.
Okay.
We have Nicholas Claxton, Daniel Gafford, Walker Kessler, and Rudy Gobert.
Mm,
All elite shot blockers, in my opinion.
facts. All good shot blockers. But I'm just wondering, the guy who sticks out to me is okay, go through the list one more time for me real quick.
We got Nicholas Claxton,
Uh-huh.
Daniel Gafford, Walker Kessler, and Rudy Gobert.
Okay, there's two players. There's two players that stick out to me. And it's more so about playing time, though. That's the thing. The two guys that stick out to me are Walker Kessler and Nick Claxton. They're the two that stick out, and it's strictly playing time. It's strictly playing time because I felt like Utah just had 8 million different roster changes taking place, but Brooklyn was bad. Like Utah was bad, but like Utah had stretches where they were.
They were solid.
You know what? You know what? Actually, I'm gonna pick Nick Claxton, and the reason why is because it wasn't just that Brooklyn was bad. I remember all year, we kind of said this in passing over the course of the regular season. Brooklyn's defense for the group that they have, Dorian Finney-Smith, Mikal Bridges, and those guys, like their team was abnormally bad for the kind of players they have. So I'm going to go with Nick Claxton.
My man is a freaking detective right now. He is 3 for 3.
Let's cook. Let's cook. Let's cook. Let's cook.
4 blocks away. He had 146 from joining this. He had 146, so 4 away from making the list. But yeah, a lot of these guys like Gafford had like 152, Kessler 156. Gobert was like almost did make it with 160. So it was a pretty it was pretty close for all of them. But yeah, Claxton just misses out.
Daniel Gafford's interesting because I actually kind of let him slide, but he seems like a shot block hunter. So like, you know, he's the kind of guy that like he might not get like 3 blocks in a game, but when he gets the one, it's like into the 8th row, you know, that kind of thing. So he was somebody I was a little sketchy about. But Walker Kessler, he was just in combat with like 3-4 other guys for front court minutes this year. So the fact that he still got over 150 blocks. Shout out to him.
He's a good defender, man. Walker Kessler is a good defender for sure. All right, next question. Players with a 40-point, 15 rebound performance.
Wow. Okay.
So we have here Alperen Şengün. We have Lauri Markkanen, Denny Avdija, and Joel Embiid.
What? What? Denny with the 40 and 15 family pack? Wait a minute. See, this is like the Emmanuel Quickly thing. Like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. That just don't sound right.
All of these guys are capable, and Denny Avdija, but yeah.
Okay. The 15 is rebounds.
Yes.
Right? It's like, why can I see him doing that though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of Jay, you gotta go with your gut, bro. He didn't just throw Denny Avdija in there as something like he didn't throw that in there as like a layup to be like, duh. Like, come on, bro. It could have been him. But then that like low-key makes him a Wizard legend, and it's like, can I really believe that either though? Like, oh my God. Okay, name the players again.
Alperen Şengün, Lauri Markkanen, Denny Avdia, and Joel Embiid.
I know Joel did it. I feel like relatively confident in that. Denny definitely did it, and it makes him a Wizard GOAT for no reason, but he had to. So then it just comes down to Lauri and Alperen Şengün. I'm gonna say Lauri Markkanen didn't do it.
And you are 4 for 4. Lauri Markkanen was the one, man.
Let's go.
Oh man.
Let's go. Yo, Diddy is crazy, bro. Who did he do that against?
Denny Avdia did this against the Pelicans on Valentine's Day. This is the love he showed the Pelicans.
Jesus Christ. All right.
43 points and 15 rebounds.
What in the world?
I remember this day clearly, and here's the reason why. Because I had a chance to pick him up on the waiver wire in one of my leagues, and I was choosing between him and some other dude, and I chose the other dude, and I see this man on the waiver wire with like 70 fantasy points, and it made me sick to my stomach. It made me so sick.
It's like that's what hell of a group, though. Let's be real. That was a good group. That was a good group. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, Lauri Markkanen was close. He was honestly 38 and 15. He was 38 and 15.
Okay. All right. Okay. And that's for some reason that sounds about right, which is crazy.
38 and 15 for Lauri. All right. Number 5. Players who hit 18 plus free throws in a game this year.
Ooh, free throw merchants. Okay, got you.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yo.
Jeremy Grant.
What?
Luka Doncic and Jimmy Butler.
What? Jeremy. Come on, TV. Eventually, you gotta stop. Cause what? Jeremy Grant had 18 free throw attempts in a game.
No, it's made free throws.
What? No, but then that still means you gotta go to the free throw line at least 18 times. What? But he is the only thing breathing over there in Portland, low key. So it's like he low key. Nah, that's nasty work, bro. That's nasty. 18 made free throws is crazy though. Jalen Brunson?
No, Jalen Brunson's not on this list.
Wait, who was the list? Who was the list
so
again?
we got SGA, we have Grant, Luka Doncic, and Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler was the one. I was like, okay, same person as far as I'm concerned in this regard, but still. Bro. Ain't no way Jeremy Grant had 18 free throws, bro. It's no way. It's no way, bro. It's no way, bro. I don't believe that. But I think he did it though, which is like scary because you know what's crazy? Now that I'm thinking about it, he probably not only made 18 free throws, he probably made like 20. Now, and that sounds crazy because I really don't believe Jeremy Grant did this, but because he's on this list, he probably didn't just hit 18. He probably had to clear it for him to actually be on this list. He didn't just hit 18 flat. If he hit 18 flat, I don't think you would have put him on this list. So I think he comfortably hit 18. So I'm going to take him off. SGA is definitely on the list. Luka or Jimmy? What the heck?
I mean, 3 of these guys are pretty like synonymous with as like what some people might call foul baiting.
Yeah, I didn't think Jeremy Grant was getting to the free throw line 18 times either. And that's like that's like messing my whole thing up right now. Like, oh. You know what? I'm gonna just go with what the right answer should be if it's not Jeremy Grant. I think that Jimmy Butler just didn't play enough. So I'm gonna pick Jimmy.
Incorrect answer. It's okay, man. The correct answer was actually SGA. SGA. Highest this season was 17.
No way.
Seven.
What the heck?
Yeah,
Oh,
Jimmy
damn.
Butler hit 18 versus the Pacers in November. We had Luka hitting 18 versus the Magic in January. And Jeremy Grant, in his 49-point performance, hit 18 on the dot.
Oh, he hit 18 smack? Oh, that's crazy. What
18.
the heck?
But yeah, SGA is the answer. I feel like this was the toughest one because I don't blame you for eliminating SGA right away. But
Yeah.
like he didn't hit 18. He didn't hit 18.
He was
Crazy.
one of the best free throw drawers in the NBA this year. Like, he was
Yeah.
getting to the line a ton. But
Crazy. Yeah.
at the same time, though, wow, 17.
Yeah.
Okay.
The most in the season, by the way, Giannis with 24 now. He
Oh,
had
wow.
one game.
Okay.
In a
Well,
64-point game. In a 64-point game, he had 24. But yeah,
Jesus.
final question.
Okay.
Players that hit 11 or more threes in a game.
Okay, I think I might actually be able to get this one.
Steph Curry,
Mm-hmm.
Sam Hauser,
Yeah.
Dante DiVincenzo, Keegan Murray.
We know Keegan did. I know Dante did because I had to repost the graphic when I covered the Knicks game that he did it in. But Sam Hauser and Steph Curry being the last two is like the worst process of elimination I've ever had in my life. Because that's actually crazy. Because, like, you can't be serious. But then at the same time, I just said 2 segments ago that the Boston Celtics were like the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA outside of the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. So it's like,
But versus Steph Curry, though?
but that's what I'm saying. But Steph, you know what? No, there's no way, bro. Those last two is crazy. You know what, TV? Wow, that's nuts. Okay, Jay. Clutch up here. I'ma say Sam Hauser. I'ma say Sam hit like 10, and that's why he didn't make it.
Well, Jay, the correct answer is Sam Hauser.
Oh my, let's
Sam
go.
Hauser.
Oh my gosh, let's go.
There you
Let's
go.
go.
10 threes, by the way, in three
It
quarters
was
for
10?
Sam Hauser. Yeah, 10 threes and 3/4 for Sam Hauser. Got injured before the fourth, so he could not get more than that.
Let's
Unfortunately,
go.
got injured before the fourth. So
You know what?
he was
I
on.
will
He was
take
on one that game, but he just could not finish it off.
I will take that. That just seemed that was look. I know the other one stumped me because the random throw in, dude. But something about when you do process of elimination and you get down to Steph Curry and anyone for threes, I'm sorry, bro. It would have just felt weird to take Steph out. But 10, that he had to have been on the list for a reason. It made sense that he hit. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. What the heck?
Yeah, and that's the quiz, man. This is definitely a different type of quiz, but this was really fun.
Yeah, I actually like multiple choice. It's kind of cool, but the fact that I got one wrong, now I gotta redeem myself next quiz because I was on one for a little minute. That free throws one, man. Jesus.
Yeah, we might do another odd man one on. We might do one playoff style, so we might have to do something like that. So we'll have to wait for that. But yeah, let us know down below what other quizzes you want to see. And if you have any other suggestions for this, the drafts for the future, let us know down below what you guys got. This is the first time we had an episode reach over 2 hours, man. We had so much to talk about, so much to go through. But it's a great episode. Thank you guys for watching. Jay, what do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Dude, it's been a great postseason. It's only getting more and more exciting as we narrow down the teams. We're in NBA draft mode. I feel like I've been promoting the routine jumper for like 2 years, and I've never been more serious about it than now. which is a completely different dynamic to just like covering the game right now.
Yeah.
Hit Your Free Throws podcast is going on strong, and I feel like we're only about to improve as we catch our stride. And yeah, man, I say it every single podcast. I think that we're only getting better with time, and I think that the league is making things more and more interesting every time we hit the record button, which is just making great content for us to give you guys.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to give you more, especially as the playoffs go around, especially when we're going into the conference finals pretty soon. We're going to do that. We might even we have a lot of different content ideas that we have for you guys, so be on the lookout for the Hit Your Free Throws page, TikTok, Instagram, any of the podcast networks, YouTube, and all that. You'll be able to find us there. Thank you guys for watching. We really do appreciate all of your support. Make sure you check out our individual content as well. That's going to start to pick up very soon. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. Take it easy, guys. This is me and Jay signing out. Peace.